For the past few months, I've been hiding a little bit of a secret. I've dropped the odd hint here and there on social media, but today I finally get to talk about it. And let me introduce you to the AtomStack Hurricane CO2 laser, brand new to the market. And in today's video, we're going to be doing a full review on this machine. So let's not waste any more time and dive straight in. Let's begin by talking about AtomStack themselves. Now, that name will be familiar to a lot of you because they've been in the makerspace for around 10 years, originally starting with 3D printing, then they broke into the diode laser market, and I believe at one point had the most powerful diode laser on the market, so it goes to show their innovation, but also now obviously breaking into the CO2 world with the release of this Hurricane. So it is very safe to say these are not a new kid on the block. They have lots of history behind them to know what they're doing when they're releasing a product. Now, when your laser arrives, the first thing you need to do is get it unboxed. And even though this is considered a desktop CO2 machine, it is obviously still quite large and therefore has a bit of weight to it. So actually, the hardest part is getting it out of the box and onto a workbench. So it probably will take two people to get that done, obviously to make sure it is safe. But beyond that, the actual setup is pretty simple. You need to add some distilled water to the cooling system, distilled, not deionized. There is a difference between them. And take out a little bit of internal packaging, obviously, to make sure that everything is free to run and move about. You have a dust extraction fan on the back, so connect a hose to that and feed it outside. There is an air purifier, which I'll move on to a little bit later in the video. But ultimately, once you've done those few things, as I say, you are pretty much good to go and get this up and running. Let me briefly explain the difference between a CO2 laser versus a diode laser if you're not familiar with it. With a diode laser, the source of the laser is generated from the head of the laser itself, and obviously everything is contained within that. With a CO2 laser, there is a tube at the back of the machine, and this is where the laser source is generated from. It then bounces it across a couple of mirrors, across the side, back to the head itself, and focuses the beam down onto the material. So ultimately what this means is the laser source is generated away from the head. There is less weight in the head itself, and therefore it means that this can actually move quicker. There is also a difference in the wavelength of the lasers itself and ultimately what it can cut, which I'll move on to later, because usually a CO2 laser is considered a lot more versatile than a diode laser. Now, coming back to the setup of the machine itself, they provide a range of written guides and videos that are very simple to follow on the various things you may want to adjust on it. So for example, the mirrors that I just mentioned, it shows you what parts to adjust to realign the laser, and also something like the camera, how to calibrate that for its focus of the bed. So it is really easy for beginners to get up and running with this machine. Now, one of the things people often worry about or spend a lot of time trying to figure out is the parameters of the laser, as well as in what speeds to run things at, what power to run things at. They provide a comprehensive list of a material guide with all the various speeds and settings that you will need to get started. Now, what I would say is these are a guidance. They are getting you close to the area. Depending on the type of wood you're using or the source of your material, you may have to adjust those settings slightly, but ultimately you're going to be very close using that parameters list to get yourself started. The build quality of this machine is really impressive. Most of it is done in steel and aluminium. Obviously, you've got some glass and things on top to give you viewing windows. The lid itself is on dampeners, making it very easy to open and close, and it takes its own weight. A really nice feature. It is also a very sturdy lid. There is no flex or wobble in it, just adding to the strength of this machine. They've done a really nice job of hiding as many mechanisms as possible on the inside of the machine to protect them from debris, dust, smoke, that type of thing, but it just means the inside of the machine is super clean. And even though they have done a great job in keeping everything enclosed and protective, there is still obviously various bolts around the machine so you can access the relevant areas if you need to. So for example, if you're doing a maintenance schedule, you can still get access to the areas that you need. Specifications, a big thing to a lot of people, and rightly so. Now, the overall size of this machine is around 42 inches in its length, so that's about 106 centimeters, by about 27.5 inches deep, so that's about 70 centimeters. And again, the same for the height, 27.5 70 centimeters. So that's the overall dimensions of the machine. Now obviously you want to leave a little bit of space around it for things like maintenance, access to various areas. Now the weight of it is around 50 kilograms, so say it's quite heavy to lift, and ultimately once this is in place you kind of want to leave it where it actually is. The power output for the laser is 55 watts, which in my opinion is the right amount of power for a desktop CO2 laser. Now in terms of where that can operate, the work area is 500 wide by 300 deep. But actually the internal dimensions are larger, so you can put bigger pieces of material in there. You can even do something what is called a pass-through, which is where you take away the bed, remove the tray, and you can manually feed material through in case you wanted to do something really large. Now there is a conveyor for this, which I'll talk about in the accessories section of the video, but ultimately it means you've got a good amount of space to play with, and if you want to do longer pieces you can also do that as well. Now the way that this is allowed to work is ultimately not only can you control the height of the laser within the head using your software, there are a couple of knobs on the side here that you can release to higher and lower the entire laser head, obviously to accommodate for various things if you're passing material through or doing deeper material. In terms of the speed of the machine, this is rated up to 600 millimeters per second. That is like crazy quick in terms of how fast it moves, and obviously going to make getting jobs done much quicker. And a great feature that makes users' life very easy, it also has autofocus. There is a button right here to do it, and you can also do it from within your software. And ultimately it means that the head of the laser will find the height of the material and set the correct depth that it needs to be at to perform as optimal as possible. Let's talk about the fun stuff. What can you actually engrave with this laser? Now this is one of those scenarios where I feel I need to take a big Ace Ventura deep breath in. But actually I'm just going to put a list on the side of the screen. The list is quite extensive, but we are talking like your hardwood, your softwood, your basswood, which is great for cutting out of. Things like bamboo as well can also be engraved with this. Other products may be acrylics. Clear acrylic is a big advantage that you can do on CO2 lasers, the same as glass. You can engrave glass with these machines. You're also going to be able to engrave things such as PCB boards, stones and rocks, things like denim and other materials as well. Leather you can also engrave, but make sure it is natural leather that is tanned without chromium. This is a really big thing. Leather with chromium or fake leather will give off toxic gases when you burn them, so do be careful of that. In terms of what can be cut with this laser, well obviously a lot of the products that we have just mentioned can be cut with this. This kind of can cut glass, but only thin glass, so do be careful of that. But it definitely will cut obviously all your different varieties of wood, clear, plastic, acrylic like this, and even as say things like leather and stuff as well. So the range of products you can do with this machine is amazing. It is so versatile. But as I say, one of the biggest selling points is the fact it does clear acrylic and glass, which obviously diode lasers cannot do. And it also cuts them really well and really clean. Let me answer a question I hate being asked. How thick can this laser cut? Now the reason I hate this question ultimately is because there are so many variables in it and it's not a straightforward answer. For example, I could cut 15mm plywood successfully. You may get it from a different supplier and have different results. Equally, the deeper you are cutting, the worse quality of the cut you will actually get. For example, on screen at the moment, it is cutting through 20mm clear acrylic in one single pass. Now it did this and the end of the product actually looks really nice and shiny. But when you actually put the two pieces together, you can see the difference in the kerf and the type of gap that it created. Now this isn't just for this laser, this is any lasers in general, diode lasers as well. The deeper you cut, the worse the quality is going to be. So yes, this will cut 20mm acrylic in one single pass. It will cut 18mm pine in one single pass. Would I want to be doing that regularly? No, not at all. What I would say realistically is you don't want to be cutting any regular thicknesses, probably more than 12mm on this machine. Even though it can do more, be cautious and just keep it lower to get better quality cuts. Safety is a huge part of owning a laser, not only to protect yourself, to protect the environment it's in, and also protect the machine. And this is packed with quite a few. Let's obviously start with the lid itself. This is a rated viewing window, so you can actually watch your laser operating without fear of damaging your eyes and still comfortably see everything that is going on within it. The lid itself has some safety switches, so if you open the lid either on purpose or on accident, it will cut the laser out. And as I say, minimises any risk to damaging your eyes from the laser itself. So that is a great feature, but also the extraction fan will continue to run as well if you open the lid, just to pull all that dirty air out. Now the dirty air itself is pulled out of the back of the machine through the inbuilt extraction fan, and obviously you have a hose with the machine that you should put out of a window or into something like an air purifier, just to keep the air around you as clean and breathable as possible. Now one thing I love about this machine is that safety is key to it. Unlike some other companies in the market, they're not trying to sell you additional safety products later on, they're including them from the start. And what I'm talking about here is flame detection and flame extinguishing. Now basically what will happen is there is a sensor in the head, and if it detects there is about to be a flame started, it will stop the job. There is a unit in the back of this machine that you can connect a pot of water to, and what it will do is instead of blowing air out for the air assist, it will actually change it to blow a bit of water out, obviously to douse the flame. It then will give it a few seconds. If it detects that it's still going, it will do another burst and another burst, ultimately to put the flame out. Now this feature can be disabled if you want to, because there are obviously some materials that you may want to cut at higher temperatures and you don't want this kicking in as a false alarm. But ultimately it does mean that if it goes to detect a flame or something dangerous, then obviously it's going to kick in that fire safety feature and just guarantee that your machine is going to be safe and not burn down like you see a lot of things on YouTube and social media. It's probably an ideal time to point out that this is actually a prototype of the machine. It's one of the first ones that are released from the factory to do some testing and make sure everything works before going out to the public. Now the reason that this is important is even though this machine actually has the extinguisher installed on the back of the machine, there is something disabled on the control board, so it's not working. So whilst I've been able to actually test the flame detection and that works great, it moves the head out of the way nice and quickly, I haven't actually been able to test the fire extinguisher feature itself, but this will all work and be going live obviously to the public when these machines get sold. Even though they are the closest things to me, I nearly overlooked them. It also has an emergency stop button and an on and off key, so ultimately you can take the key out and this machine can't be used without it. Now once I've initially checked that everything is moving okay with the laser, one of the first jobs I actually do is just running various material tests or speed and power tests. Now, there are a couple of reasons for this, but the main one is actually to just check everything is working as expected. You're getting the right focal length that you need and your laser path is nice and sharp. It can run at the speeds that you are expecting, and ultimately that it is not missing steps in any places. Now the reason that I say that is because when you receive a machine, it's obviously going to be brand new, and people don't talk about it that often, but most machines need to be bedded in a little bit. So you just need to run the machine a couple of times, do various material tests, and as I say, just make sure that the machine is bedding in well and everything is running smooth, there's no stiff spots on the rails, and ultimately it's just going to lead to better jobs at the end. One of the more advanced things that is a bit difficult on this machine is checking the CO2 tube. Now I mentioned earlier this is water cooled, so obviously there's a water pump that pumps water all around this tube. Now you should regularly inspect these and make sure that everything is okay, but it's actually one thing that I actually did find slightly annoying about this machine. There is something like 12 bolts holding this panel on to inspect the CO2 tube. So actually when you come to do this, it is a little bit of a pain. I think if they modified or changed this in the future, I would just like it to be a little bit more accessible, maybe even as simple as less bolts holding it in place. Obviously the bolts help the rigidity of the machine, but that is one thing that users do need to access, so it could probably do with being improved or more easily accessible. That's a lot of talking. Coffee break time. So let's talk about the all-important price. Now this is entering the market with the early bird special at $2,799. My exclusive discount code will also get you another 5% off that. Now the regular retail price for this is going to at least be $500 more than that, which is why it's always good to get in with the early bird offers. Now I don't like talking about things in terms of is that cheap or is that expensive, because that's all relevant to you and your budget. What I prefer to talk about is value for money. Now as part of taking this machine on, I looked at some of its competitors of similar specification, both lower priced and higher priced. Now the ones that were lower priced than this, it's safe to say there's a lot of questionable comments around the quality of the machine and the customer service. So the type of companies I would want to buy off, probably not. In terms of the ones that are higher priced than this machine, well, this includes features as standard that they want to charge you extra for, such as the flame detection and the flame extinguisher. So is this value for money? Well, especially at the early bird price, you're getting a lot for your money with this machine. Customer services, it's one of those things you hope you never have to use, but if you do, you want it to be a positive experience. Now, people often question, how can I judge this given that these machines are sometimes sent to me for product reviews like this one? It is a very valid question. So here is what I do personally. I'll go and join the various groups for these machines, whether it's their official groups, unofficial groups, and I'll just hover in the background. I'll watch the type of questions popping up, I'll watch the type of comments being put back, especially from the manufacturers. More importantly, I will watch how the group is moderated and whether negative things are taken down and deleted, because that is a big giveaway. The companies are trying to hide things. A good company will just leave the comments up and address them accordingly. Now, I can honestly say from everything that I've seen, I've got nothing to worry about with AtomStack. Yes, some people have issues, they post questions and things like that, but ultimately that's what these forum groups are for. It's for people to get answers nice and quick to anything that they come across. Now, in terms of my own experience with AtomStack, this was sent to me as a prototype, and what usually happens during this process is little things get picked up that could be changed or improved before the final product goes live. Now, there are two types of companies out there. The first type of company will assess how much those changes are going to cost before deciding if it's worth implementing them. The second type of company are as receptive as possible and want to get the product close to being perfect before it goes live, and will take all that feedback on board. Now, fortunately, AtomStack are the latter of those two. There are a few things about this machine that I have fed back that they have improved straight away. Perfect example, the water filler tank on the other side of this machine. On my version, it's very difficult to see how much liquid is in there. I sent this to them as feedback. Within a very short period, they sent me a redesigned version back with a new tank showing how much liquid is actually in there. So it's that type of customer service and level of support that really impresses me. A few other things as well. They've updated the pump design in the version you're going to get. Even little things like replacing these zip ties on the hose with actual hose clamp. It just really goes to highlight, as I say, the sort of quality you can expect from AtomStack. One thing I kind of hate about having a smaller workshop is having to crawl around everywhere when reviewing bigger products like this. Right, let's talk about accessories now. The first obvious thing you can see over here, this big white box, is the air purifier. Now, the machine has an extraction fan in it, and obviously it can pump those fumes out of a hose, out of a window or a door, but that's not always convenient. So this air purifier has another extraction fan inside of it and also runs the air through filters to clean it up and pumps it out the far side. Now, I've had an air extractor before. I didn't find it to be that efficient. However, this one has been amazing. The fan inside of it is really powerful, so it helps extract all of the air out of there even faster. And actually the amount of, I suppose, impurities in the air I found generally to be minimal. Now, don't get me wrong, I would still always say keep a window or a door open whilst you are operating this machine and still using that, but ultimately the amount, as I say, of impurities in the air was a lot less using this than not using it at all, or using previous ones that I've had from other companies. So definitely a top tip, top buy if you are considering buying one of these machines. Let's move on. The big thing behind me. Now, the work area of this machine is 500 by 300. This behind me is the conveyor, and it ultimately converts the work area from 500 to 800. That is a huge work area. And the way that it does this is basically an accessory that sits underneath the machine, and it slides the bed backwards and forwards. So there's no manual repositioning of things. It does this all automatically. There's like 2 settings you have to adjust in the software, and everything else is pretty much plug and play. So basically it just gives you the opportunity to do much bigger pieces of work on this machine by using the conveyor to go backwards and forwards. One thing I should obviously highlight is you need about another ½ meter in front and behind in order to use this, because of it going in and out. Nice accessory, but as I say, all depends on whether you actually want to do those bigger work areas or not, but obviously you can add it on later if you decide to. Now, as part of that, you do need this down here, which is the riser. This basically lifts the machine up by a couple of inches and just allows that conveyor to work. You will have seen it from the start of this video on the machine, because ultimately sort of once it's in place, you just leave it there. The other accessory that I've also got is what's called the knife blade bed or the blade bed. Now, machines like this often have honeycomb beds. The larger the bed, the more flexible the honeycomb becomes. And sometimes in the middle of the work area, there's actually quite a bit of flex going on within the bed. So you can upgrade this to the knife bed, which is thicker pieces of metal going across that have almost got like points on them. And it just means your work is going to be supported a lot better than using a standard honeycomb bed. So nice additional upgrade there, as I say, if you are used to cutting much larger things all of the time. Now, one accessory that I don't have is the rotary. Now, the reason for this, it's not being released yet. This will be coming out in November, but ultimately there is a rotary coming for this. So all of your tumblers and cups and thermos mugs and that type of thing, you're going to be able to get done on this machine when that rotary device is released. So let's dive into the world of software. Obviously, what's the point in having a laser if you're unable to control it? Now, the big selling point of this machine for me is it runs on something called Gerbil, which is open source firmware for the machine. It allows it to talk to your PC. Now, the big advantage of open source is it basically means it's out there for free. And if you're coming from a background of something like diode lasers, you will already be familiar with it because pretty much all diode lasers use Gerbil. Now, if, for example, you've already purchased Lightburn to run your diode laser, well, it's going to be able to run this easy as well. Now, the reason I'm highlighting this is usually CO2 lasers require you to purchase an additional license in order to run them. But because you've already got Gerbil license, you can run this machine on the existing license that you already have. Now, obviously, Lightburn is the best software out there for lasers. It's got lots of great features in it, but it does come at a cost. Now, AtomStack have actually made their own software for this machine. I'm usually skeptical when companies make their own software for their machines because there's bugs in it. They often overlook a lot of the user interface and it's generally not great, or they're just trying to push additional products as a result of it. Now, I can genuinely say the AtomStack software has been nice to use. It is very basic, it is beginner friendly, but you can do all the things that you would expect, such as importing images using the text tool, drawing shapes. Everything is going to be there to get you up and running and get you started. And to some degree, certain elements of this machine work better with their software than it will with Lightburn. For example, the camera calibration, the autofocus, that is pre-built into their software. In Lightburn, you have to create your own macro button to use the autofocus. So it's little things like that that actually mean from a beginner's point of view, starting with their software is going to make your journey much easier and you don't have to worry about the additional cost of Lightburn. For those of you interested in the audio levels, I took a couple of readings with the machine running. Take into account the air purifier is also working and I have a small workshop. Right on top of the machine we were averaging 83.5 decibels, 1 metre away we were averaging 78 decibels, and 2 meters away we were averaging 77 decibels. Now, just to put that into perspective, the volume of my voice as I'm talking is around 80 decibels, so it gives you an indication. And what I'll do now is switch from my voice to the actual audio of the machine so you can hear it. So generally speaking, even around a metre away from the machine, we're talking about the noise of a handheld vacuum. So that is my overview of the AtomStack Hurricane CO2 laser. And for their first CO2 laser to the market, they have done an amazing job. They have clearly put the time and research into building this machine and not just got it out to the public super quick. So well done to AtomStack for taking the time to do that and making users' life very easy. Now, if you are thinking of purchasing one of these, there will be some affiliate links in the description area below that will always take you to the best available price. They don't cost you any more. I may just get a tiny bit back that helps keep the channel going. Hope you've enjoyed the video and thank you all very much for watching. Obviously, if you've enjoyed it, do give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe. Final thanks as always goes to my patrons. I appreciate everything you do. But now I'm going to go and carry on playing with this machine because I've got a follow-up video coming out very soon about doing a project on this machine. So keep an eye out for that and I'll see you all on the next episode.